kamena Gambia ngolu alingana badia yidanyola ngabadia yidanyola undolem kini nanyumuta telom badin kilinti falumaje mandin kolinjola besanawya falumaje sarahuleni full aliasi.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are recording the first episode of this program and I am super excited about it. You know, we have a lot of things to go through today, but before then I just wanted to give a big shout out to my friends, family and all of you for the many supportive messages. I appreciate the phone calls, the text messages and every single thing that you guys do in the background. Thank you so much. I would also like to equally use this opportunity to thank you again, you know, for the likes, subscription and even sharing this channel with your network. That we really appreciate. You know, when I started this journey, I knew that I could always count on you. I knew that the support was always gonna be great, but to be honest, I wasn't expecting it to be as quickly as it is right now. Guys, we are already over 100 subscribers and I'm really liking it. You know, I'm sure we can even do better. So for those of you that already subscribed, thank you so much. And for others that haven't yet subscribed, please go ahead and hit the subscription button so that you can continue to see our videos and then be able to send us feedbacks. In this program, every single feedback matters, and I look forward to reading your feedback in the comment section. Thank you so much. In this episode, I will dive into the recent electric incident in Niumi, where 7 electric workers were electrocuted to death. We do not have all the details surrounding the incident yet, but as far as I can remember, this is perhaps one of the most tragic electricity-related accidents we've ever seen in our country. At this point, I can't help but think about the feelings that the parents, spouses, and the children of these victims will be going through. The pain and agony lives with them for the rest of their lives. Nothing brings back life, and certainly not any financial compensation that the families of these victims might end up getting from the hiring company. This is why we always have to put safety at the forefront of everything we do. Our hearts go out to all the families affected by this. We will, as a nation, pray that the souls of these poor victims continue to rest in peace. But if you think that electric safety is all about NAWEC, BB and other electric companies, no, it's not. Electric safety is way bigger than NAWEC and certainly bigger than all the political parties we have in the Gambia. Therefore, we must not politicize this. At this point, our focus should be on the lives that are already gone and the many more lives that will be gone if we do not change our procedures. I hope that we will, as a nation, put our differences aside and think about all the many safety procedures we have in our country and improve them to prevent such accidents from happening again. To me, accidents should be rare. But if similar accidents keep happening over and over and over again, to me the best definition would be negligence. I'm not saying that's what happened in this particular case because, like I said before, we do not have all the details yet, but it is something to reflect on. The major hazards associated with electricity. Then I will talk about the different personal protective equipments, usually abbreviated as PPEs, and how each of them, if done correctly, can be very helpful in protecting us, but more so our brothers and sisters that work in and around energized systems from hazards like the one we recently saw in the Gambia. Then from there, I will look into some specific electricity-related accidents that happened in the Gambia in the past few years. Then we can look together to see what safety measures we are missing from those instances. and then probably discuss what could have been done better. Then finally, I will conclude by asking more and more questions to NAWEC and all the other energy stakeholders in our country about how they are managing their employees in terms of training, in terms of certification, and in terms of providing them with the right equipments. I know the investigation in this particular case is still ongoing, and we're not going to make any conclusions on that yet. But I do understand that if you send people to work in electric systems without providing them the needed training and the right certifications and the right equipment, then that could be a
the motherland. Peace to the people living here. Peace to the people who pray for the peace and the prosperity of the motherland.
So let's start with the major hazards associated with electricity. Now, before we jump into this, I just want to make a quick disclaimer that I am not a trained electrician, and everything that I'll be talking about here today is based on my very limited knowledge on electricity, which I acquired from the classes that I enrolled in while in grad school, but also thanks to the very, very good training I had from the companies that I've worked for. Now, these companies, even though they didn't hire me to be doing electricity work for them, they understand that I'll be working on systems where these hazards are present. Therefore, they owe me the right to be trained on all the hazards associated with my job, plus how to mitigate them. So here are the 4 major hazards I'll be covering in today's discussion: electric shocks, electrocution, arc flash, and fall. So falling down from the top of an elevated surface is more of a secondary hazard than it is a primary hazard. But the reason I'll be talking about it today is because we have people that work on these elevated surfaces. So we want to discuss what PPEs are available to protect them if they were to fall from the top of those surfaces, which could be fatal in some instances. Let's start with electric shock, which is of course the less severe one. Electric shock occurs when we come in direct contact with electricity through naked or hot wires. And it is usually described as the effect of an electric current, or as the physical effect of an electric current that enters our bodies. So the degree of the shock may range from being very, very harmless to something lethal. For example, most of us have at some point experienced electric shock. Like, think about coming back from work late at night in a very, very cold night, then trying to open your doorknob. The electric shock, or the shock that you typically feel by trying to contact the metallic doorknob, would be an example of a static electric shock. And it would be one of the harmless situations that I just mentioned. On the other hand, electric shock from dynamic current, which include the AC or the alternating current we have in our homes, could be more lethal. So the effect of this could range from just mere burns on the fingers to even death in some cases. But you will see as we go through this, you will understand that the degree of shock we receive depends on the voltage, but also on the current as well. That is why having the right PPE, especially if you're somebody that works in electric systems, is always very, very important. The PPEs, or the personal protective equipments to protect us from electric hazards, especially for those that do domestic electric works, include having rubber insulating gloves, rubber insulating sleeves, electric hazard rated footwear, then hard hat and safety glasses. These are the instruments that protect us from electric shocks. So next is electrocution. Electrocution and electric shocks are very similar in the sense that they both occur as a result of us coming in direct contact with electricity via naked wires. However, the main difference is that electrocution is mostly fatal, meaning it causes death, while electric shock does not always lead to death. Now, the difference is that in electrocution, a much larger amount of high voltage current passes through our bodies, causing fibrillation of the heart, which results in cardiac arrest and death. The PPEs to protect an electric worker from being electrocuted are similar to the PPEs for preventing electric shock. And they include electrical hazard rated footwear, rubber insulating gloves and sleeves, hard hat, safety goggles, and the use of insulating tools. This now brings us to the third major hazard associated with electricity: arc flash. So for those of you that have received any form of electricity training in the US, you have probably seen the high emphasis placed on this hazard. This is because this is the most dangerous hazard associated with electricity. And it is usually described as being so sudden, intense, but an explosive release of electrical energy caused by electrical fault or short circuit in an electrical system. Arc flash can produce temperatures exceeding 19,000 degrees Celsius. 19,000 degrees Celsius. Think about it. Now, to put that in perspective, the temperature of the surface of the sun is 5,600 degrees C. So if you do the math, you can see that arc flash can produce temperatures 3 times hotter than the surface of the sun. And because arc flash comes with so much force, like the explosion is accompanied by a lot of force, like very high force, this force is able to tear down all instruments or all tools, sending metal pieces with speed of up to 700 miles per hour. Example of materials that commonly fail and lead to arc flash include transformers, switch gears, circuit breakers, cables and wiring, etc. and etc. So because of the severity of this hazard, the US government, through the NFPA 70E, now NFPA is just an acronym meaning National Fire Protection Association, and NFPA 70E is also referred to as the Electric Code, National Electric Code, like NEC. So this code established what is called the approach boundaries, like 3 approach boundaries, to protect electric workers whenever they are close to systems capable of arc flash. But remember, these systems could be what? Circuit breakers, and transformers, and even wiring and cables. So it's all over the place. Therefore, one must be really vigilant whenever they are around this area. The 3 approach boundaries defined in the National Electric Code for energized systems include the limited access boundary. Just as the name implies, this is the safest area where one can stand and be protected if an arc flash were to happen. So this is the area where all non-qualified electric workers must stand behind this zone just to make sure that they have the full protection if anything should happen. Next to that is the restricted approach boundary. This is also like the second most dangerous zone, and is only for qualified electric workers to cross. And finally is the prohibited approach boundary. Here nobody just gets close to as long as the system is energized. However, it is important to note that these arc flash boundaries are dependent on voltage and incident energy. Now what this means is that these boundaries are not going to be the same for every system. Like think about it, for instance, a circuit breaker with 70 volts versus another circuit breaker with, let's say, 2000 volts would have different boundaries, because these are all calculated based on what the voltage of the system is. So the PPEs to protect electric workers from arc flash incidents would be flame resistant clothing, face shields, and arc rated footwear, etc. and etc. This is because this hazard is mainly accompanied with heat and pressure. So electric workers are expected to dress up in manners that will protect them from being burned alive, and also like the pressures from the arc flash explosion. The last major hazard I will cover in today's discussion is fall. Now remember, fall is not a primary hazard associated with electricity, but it could also be a job-related hazard depending on where the electric job is being carried out. Example of a job that would carry this fall hazard would include electric workers working on replacing power lines on electric poles or in elevated surfaces. So the PPEs to protect electric workers from this will include harnesses and also fall arrest systems. This brings us to the end of the major hazards associated with electricity. Now, the biggest takeaway here is that these hazards can be very, very dangerous. Therefore, beyond selecting the right PPEs and even complying with the regulations, that is, if they exist, there should be strong emphasis on training and awareness. And what this means is that employees need to be well informed about the potential risks or hazards associated with their jobs and the necessary precautions to take. So even though this episode is all about the Niumi incident, which is still under investigation, of course, but with many companies already distancing themselves from the accident itself, I would like to go through some electricity-related accident and other close call moments to give us opportunity to understand how electricity is being managed in our country. At this point, we shouldn't only be concerned about who is responsible for the Niumi accident. Instead, we should be worried about whether we have a system good enough to protect us as ordinary citizens, but also protect our electric workers. Because if we fail to address that, we will continue to have many more incidents similar to the one we just saw in Niumi. Let's start with this close call moment. Now, this was reported by N25 Gambia. I'm not very familiar with this site, but they seem to have a lot of followers, 32,000 followers, which is great. So they reported that a Nawek electric pole in Debakunda, that is around Serakunda, caught fire, and the residents saw the incident, contacted NAWEC, and they were still waiting for NAWEC's arrival. So this, in terms of NAWEC not being there yet, is subjective because it depends on what time they contacted NAWEC versus when they recorded this video. So I wouldn't dive much into that because it might also have something to do with the availability of resources, which again I don't also want to talk about. But looking at this, there's at least two things that trouble me. One of them is how these wires are managed. Because fire on an electric pole is not something unusual. It can happen as a result of moist combining with dust, and then creating something like this. But if you look at this, the main thing that I want to highlight here is looking at how poorly these wires are managed. I don't have to be an electrician to know that these wires are not properly managed. They're all over the place. And this is definitely setting us up for accidents like this. Now, that is the main thing. So NAWEC definitely need to look into this and see if they can improve wire management. And secondly, the other thing that I also want to highlight here is if you look at these poor kids, they probably know nothing about electricity, but they're standing in a danger zone where anything can happen to them. Now, I'm not sure what ended up happening because I didn't hear of any stories of these kids being impacted, which is what I actually wish for. But I think there also need to be some kind of sensitization. People need to know the dangers associated with electricity and where they should or shouldn't be in events like this. And here is another close call moment. Now, this one was reported by the Fatu Network, and it is a story of one Omar Jallo, who is a civil servant. So he reported that there was an electric pole just right next to his house that was bending towards his house. And he reported the incident to NAWEC on many occasions, but NAWEC still haven't responded as of the time that this story was reported on August 6th. So he is actually worried about this for two reasons. One is it's definitely gonna create loss of property or damage of property, but with electricity being involved, he's also worried about the safety of his family, which I think he has all the right to be worried about. So this is another close call moment. Again, if something like this happened and the residents are calling, and in this particular instance, he contacted NAWEC on several occasions. So what that means is that NAWEC is already aware of what is going on, but probably isn't giving it the priority it deserves. So I think this is something that we really need to work on, because again, we are setting up ourselves up for more severe incidents if we fail to respond to situations like this. So I think this is also something that NAWEC shouldn't be joking with, because if this were to fall down, think about how many people in this neighborhood might end up being victims of this incident. Another close call moment, this time reported by What's on Gambia on February 23rd. According to their story, a car, or the white car seen here, was badly damaged after a NAWEC concrete electric pole fell on it. So they said this happened in Sukuta, and according to the narrator of the story, some guys were around the area trimming down trees for a new road that was supposed to be constructed around the area. So the eye-catching part of the story is that he said, the narrator of the story mentioned that the trimming guy, who we don't know at this point whether somebody hired by NAWEC to trim the trees, or to trim down the trees, or whether it's somebody hired by the road construction companies. But whosoever the trimming guy was, they describe him as being reckless, and the way that he was trimming down the trees led to one of the trees falling down on the electric pole, which eventually led to the electric pole falling on this white SUV. So I know the story here is mainly about the car being damaged, but reading through this story, I'm more worried about the many lives that might have been gone with electricity being involved, like assuming there was power on the electric lines. So I think this is also another close call moment. So whosoever the reckless guy is in this situation definitely needed to be more careful, knowing that electricity can do a lot of damage if mishandled. So here is another close call moment reported to What's on Gambia on September 19th by one of their followers. According to the narration, the residents of Brikama Willingara saw a bunch of NAWEC electric wires laying down on the ground, and that they've been calling NAWEC since then, but no response as at the time that the story was written. And now they are worried about their safety and the safety of their children, which is a valid concern. So the question now is, how long before NAWEC respond to situations like this? Do they have more important priorities than this? I highly doubt that. Or is it a case where NAWEC waits for somebody to get electrocuted before they show up to help? That I don't know as well. But even if these wires were already de-energized, A, the residents needed to be informed, and B, there should be some kind of protection, because even in the absence of electricity, this poses other hazards like tripping. People can trip on this and fall down. So I think there was always, there should have been somebody to help manage the situation. So this brings us to the last close call moment I will cover into this discussion. This story was reported by one Haji Katie Drame on January 7th. And according to his narration, there was a cut live wire on fire lying around their area. So they contacted NAWEC and also the Gambia Fire and Rescue Services, but to no avail, meaning they didn't show up. So, but because of the safety hazard involved here, he and his friends did three things. The first thing they did was, by playing the Good Samaritan role, going around and knocking on the doors of all their neighbors to inform them about the hazard. But also they set up a barricade to prevent people from accessing the danger. And finally, they also had some people that stood by the danger to warn people from getting close. I think this was highly commendable. Thank you to that Haji Katie Drama and all his friends for doing that amazing job. So this just adds to the list of incidents where residents saw danger, contacted NAWEC, and NAWEC didn't show up on time. I think at some point we need to have honest conversations with NAWEC to understand what their priorities are. What exactly is needed to have them urgently respond to situations like this? Is it because they are resources constrained, or just negligence from their part? That we really need to know. So now that we are done covering the close call moments, let's take a deep dive into some of the electricity related accidents that were reported in the Gambia. So here I will start with the story of this 12-year-old boy from New Josuang who was electrocuted to death. The story here was reported by What's on Gambia on September 18th, 2019. So according to their narration, after the boy was electrocuted, NAWEC released a statement explaining exactly what happened. So here is what NAWEC said. They said the pole was hit by a vehicle on the night of September 13th, which was on a Friday. Then somebody was dispatched to the scene to go help fix the situation. And when he got there, he isolated the defective part of the wire and then re-energized the system with a plan that he will go back there the next day or sometime later to fix the broken wire. But one thing that he didn't realize was that the wire, the insulation that he used to isolate the wire was broken. So I think then the boy came in contact with it, and that's exactly how he lost his life. Really? I think this is one of the things that we can really classify as absolute negligence. So let's take a look at another electricity-related accident that was reported by Watson Gambia again on July 27 of 2023. Now this is a story of one Aliu Sedikant who was electrocuted to death after coming in contact with a live wire. So according to the narration, Ali was an apprentice and that he climbed a high voltage NAWEC pole in Jara Kanikunda. So think about it, this is an apprentice climbing a high voltage NAWEC pole in Jara Kanikunda. So, and that's how he got in contact with this wire and then eventually lost his life. So here is another preventable death that could have been easily avoided. Two things. One, he was an apprentice, yet still they let him climb a high voltage electric pole. I think that was completely wrong. Two, even if he has to climb that, what protective equipment were given to him to make sure that he wouldn't get electrocuted just by coming in contact with live wire? Where are the gloves? Is this how our people work in the fields? So now I will talk about the story of this very, very small boy that was also electrocuted to death. Now the story here is reported by I Am a Patriotic Gambian, and according to the narration, this small boy was electrocuted when he came in contact with an energized electric pole. So according to him, wires from this pole getting to the house passes through a corrugated roof. But you know, typically how these wires have the white pipes, you know, to protect wires from getting caught by these metallic roofs. So in this particular instance, the wire was transmitted from the electric pole to the house without using those white pipes to protect the wires from being cut. So unfortunately, the corrugated roof cut the wire, and then that was what led to the entire pole being electrified. Then the boy came in contact with the pole, and that's unfortunately how he lost his life. So another case of sheer negligence and poor wire management. And because of somebody else's mistake, this small boy has to pass away. So we have just finished going through 3 electricity-related accidents. But if you think it's only humans that are affected by this, here I will show you another story of a goat being electrocuted to death. Now here, this is another story posted by Watson Gambia on August 22nd, 2023. And in this story, you can see this goat was also electrocuted by coming in contact with a malfunctioning electric pole, and they gave the pole number. Now, in addition to that, somebody also mentioned to Watson Gambia that an elderly person was also hospitalized or rushed to the hospital when he came in contact with the same pole. And that would mean that the pole has been malfunctioning for a while and probably reported to NAWEC, but still nothing was done. And here we see an instance of a goat being killed, but also another elderly person being rushed to hospitals. These are the 2 reported incidents, meaning there might have been even more that we don't know about. So another negligence, right? Yes, another thing that we could have done better to save the lives of our people.
Gambia, Gambia. Let's stand together, come together, we all benefit. Gambia, see you Gambia. Fuck you, bolo nigga, been a sick of the finger, me taking it. Gambia, Gambia.
Now that we already know how electricity is being managed in our country, let's quickly revisit the Niumi incident. I know investigations are still ongoing, but here I will discuss the things that we already know and the other things that we should hopefully know after the investigations are done. So let's start with the things that we already know. A, they were not direct employees of NAWEC. B, they were working on an energized system. 3, they did not have all the PPEs they needed to protect them from electric shocks or electrocution. And finally, all of them were all in the danger zone. That we already know from the many reports that came out already. Next, let's move to the things that we didn't know yet, which I hope we will know after the investigations are done. A, was this an electrocution or an arc flash incident caused by a defect in the system that they were working on? The reason I ask this is, I'm still curious how all the 7 of them would have been in the danger zone at the same time. B, what training and certification did these people have? Now, I'm not talking about academic training. That is, still very important. But I'm also asking about what on-the-job training did they have, especially when it comes to safety measures. That we should also know. C, why didn't they have all the PPEs to protect them from electric shocks? Because the news currently says this was an electric shock or electrocution. Why didn't they have all the PPEs they needed for this? Then D, another thing that we should know is, was there a pre-tax plan for this job? Now, pre-tax plan is something that you decide for every single job that you do, especially if the job is dangerous. It involves engineers, technicians, and whosoever is involved in the job to sit together and carve out a plan on how they're going to execute what they want to do. Do they even have that for this job? Finally, what thought and planning went into this job? Did NAWEC communicate all the safety hazards associated with this job to the subcontractors? Because if you give a job to somebody, but without being honest about the hazards associated with the job, it will always be so hard to blame them for making fatal mistakes. Even a better question would be, who gets access to NAWEC energized systems? Because our system should be protected such that the only people that get access to them would be the people that have the right training and the right certification. So when NAWEC gave this contract to these subcontractors, did they discuss all of that? That's a question I'm still asking. Next, I will ask even more questions to NAWEC, BB, and all other electrical companies operating in the Gambia. A is, what is your hiring procedure? Who gets qualified to be hired to work for you guys? And after hiring them, what training do you give them and for how long? What I mean is, how long do you train them before they get certified to carry out individual tasks? That I really want to know. But also, do you have any safety plans for them? And by safety plan, I mean, do you have any safety training that you give them on a regular cadence? I don't mean giving them a training just one time and then be done with it, because safety procedures often get updated. So that's why there should be some kind of cadence, a training that they go through every year or every 6 months. Do we have that? And for every job that you send these people, do you give them a procedure? Or is it something that they just memorize and then expect to do the same thing? Or is there like a checklist? Or what kind of procedures do you give them? Another important question that I want to ask is, what PPEs are you providing to your people? That is like, what personal equipment are you providing to your people to protect them? Are you giving them the right gears? Are you giving them the insulated tools? And every other material that protect them from arc flash. Also, if you send them out to go work on a system, are these systems labeled to help employees know what would be a safe distance from the system? I think this is something that we also need to address as well. Now let's go back to NAWEC a little bit. What criteria do you look out for when you give out state-owned contracts to private businesses? Should we be looking at companies with a high reputation for safety? If not, what exactly do you look out for when giving out such contracts to people? Second question to Nawek again. How good are we at communicating job-related hazards to our subcontractors? And after giving them the job-related hazards, do we have them sign documents to confirm that they've already been warned about all the hazards associated with the job that they've just signed or that they have just agreed to do? Do we have that? That's another thing. Now, the story of Aliu Sedikan, the guy that unfortunately died from Jara Kanikunda, will confirm the following: that one, there was no effective training, because if Ali was well trained on safety, him being an apprentice would have known that he shouldn't have been on an energized electric pole to begin with. But from that story, we can also confirm that he did not have the right PPEs because he was electrocuted, right? And third, from that story, we can also make a conclusion that there is a gap in our training program. Those are three things that we can learn from the unfortunate demise of Aliu Sedikan from Jara Kanikunda. Finally, I know the video is already getting much longer than I wanted it to be, and I apologize for that. But before I share my final thought on this, I have a few things that I want to just share with the employees of NAWEC, BB, and other electrical companies in the Gambia. And this is like, why would you let anybody send you out for war without giving you the right ammunition to protect yourselves? Even if the money is great, shouldn't we be thinking about the small children we left behind, our spouses, and parents whose life will never be the same without us? Think about that. Nothing is worth your lives. It's either you're safe, or if the job is not safe, please don't do it. Everybody should have a right to their own personal safety. That is a right that you deserve. What this means is, even if you're hiring companies don't empower you to make those bold decisions of stopping jobs, you should be able to empower yourself to say, you know what, this is not safe, I'm not doing this. Now, if that means that you're getting fired, that's fine. I would rather have my life intact than risk it for something that is not worth it. Finally, here is my take on this whole electric issue. Going by the examples that we just saw, that is the accidents and the other close call moments, it's very evident that we have big gaps in our training procedures, which, if not addressed, will continue to create havoc in our society. As you can all see, from most of these accidents could have been easily avoided if we have had better procedures and safety measures. As much as it pains me to say this, I think we are more of a reactive nation than a proactive nation. And by being a reactive nation, I mean a nation that only reacts when calamity befalls on her people, which I guess is not right. This is evident from the many examples we saw where residents saw danger, contacted NAWEC and other electrical companies, but they either did not show up or they show up late. And in addition to that, poor wire management. Poor wire management is mostly like an accident waiting to happen. So these are the reasons that makes me believe that we are more of a reactive nation than we are a proactive nation. Taking learning from the past incidents and the many lives that we already lost through preventable death should motivate us to invest in even more advanced safety systems. Therefore, if you are as worried as I am, we should start thinking about the integrity of all the safety procedures we have in place. The procedures from all our electrical companies, but also the procedures from the Banjul Barra Ferry Services, the procedures from Denton Bridge, and all other systems which, whenever fail, will lead to even more deadly consequences. So therefore, we might end up taking some very solid stance on the way we do things. This might mean having to introduce some nationwide certification exams for masons, carpenters, and even our technicians. So So thank you so much for being with me. That's all I have for you today. Finally, I will leave you with a quote that I wrote in the past. Thank you, and I hope to see you again soon.
Sama réew dafa ne bari jàmm salaam ñëpp fonk diine fonk ànd ak cosaan